Hi everyone, welcome to this video in which we're going to talk about NMAT 21. Now the registration for NMAT 21 had just started, so we thought it would be a good idea to talk about the test structure, the nature of the test which is adaptive, and also understand what are the major changes this year and also look at the cutoff of last year for NMIMS. So let's get started. Now the first thing that we're going to talk about is the test structure. So there hasn't been any change on the test structure front. Last year also, they had equal number of questions in each of the sections, which is 36. So total of 108 questions. But the different thing, of course, is the time duration that you get for each of the sections. So you have 28 minutes for language, 52 for quant, and 40 for logical reasoning, which is a total of 2 hours. So you have to attempt 108 questions in 120 minutes. And for each of the section, the score is reported in a scaled format on 12 to 120. So you don't get your raw or absolute score, but what you get is your scaled score, which means the total score that you get is reported on a scale of 36 to 360. Now let's understand what an adaptive test is. So adaptive test means that it adapts to the difficulty at which you are comfortable. For example, think of it as if you're playing a video game. So you get, let's say, a particular level and you are able to cross that level. What you will see is that the next level is slightly more difficult. So it could be, let's say, similar difficulty or even higher difficulty. And as you keep on getting to different levels or higher levels, you will start getting more difficult tasks. The same thing happens in an adaptive test. So what NMAT does is that it picks questions from a pool of questions. And these questions that you're getting, which are collected from a pool, will be delivered one at a time. So you will not be able to see all the questions at one go, but you will see one question at a time. Now, the way they pick questions is depending on how you are answering to the previous questions. So let's say I get question 1, which is of moderate difficulty. I answer that correctly. I go to question 2, that is also moderate, and I answer that correctly. The next question that I get, which is the third question, will be of slightly higher difficulty to check whether you are able to answer it or not. Now, let's say you get it right. And if you get it right, the next question will be more difficult. But if you get it wrong, maybe the next question could be of slightly lower difficulty or moderate question. So what happens is that throughout the test, the difficulty of the test keeps fluctuating depending on how you are performing on the test. So the questions a candidate receives are targeted at his or her ability level. And that is very important thing that you need to understand. And as you start scoring in the higher bracket, which means that you are answering more number of questions correctly, which are also higher in difficulty. So if I am aiming for a high score, it's not only going to be about how many questions I get correct, but also about how many difficult questions I get correct. So the more difficult questions I see in my paper and I'm able to answer those questions correctly, my score will tend to be on the higher side. Let's also now understand the implications on scoring. So NMAT says that there is no negative marking, because the nature of the test, which is adaptive, is already taking care of that. Because if I answer some questions wrong, the next question that I get is going to be easy, which means it will have lower weightage towards my overall score. So if I answer an easy question correctly, I'm not getting significantly extra bonus points or something for that. Whereas if I answer a difficult question correctly, I might get extra points for that. And that is why, though there is no negative marking, you have to understand that throughout the test, the difficulty of the test will keep on fluctuating and it will take care of this entire thing. At the same time, one very important thing that you need to keep in mind is that there's penalty for unanswered questions at the end. So let's say there are 36 questions in quant and you are able to attempt only 30 questions. The last 6 questions you could not attempt. Now there is a penalty for this. How much is the penalty? Nobody knows. But for sure, there is penalty. Or let's say I have done 30 questions and I have maybe a minute to go. The last 6 questions, I just randomly mark as C. So I see question number 31, I mark it as C. Then I go to 32, mark it as C. And I keep doing this. And let's say all of them go wrong. That will also be negatively affecting my entire score, because all those questions might be maybe easy, or because I'm answering them wrong, they are turning out to be easy. So there could be a whole lot of things that are possible. And that is why one has to attempt the entire paper. So that should be the aim, that when I see a section, I have to complete all the 36 questions that are there in that section. As we have discussed, there's no absolute score that you get and only scaled scores are reported. and overall scaled score ranges 36 to 360. Lastly, each section has equal weightage. You might have seen some other exams where the pattern is such that one section gets priority over the other section. But in NMAT, nothing like that happens. So each section has equal weightage and you get scaled score of 120 on each of them. So now for aspirants, one very important thing about test taking strategy is that you cannot skip questions. In a lot of other exams, you see all those questions on the right hand side, so you can jump to a question that you want to solve. But that doesn't happen in NMAT. You see a question in front of you and you have to answer it to move forward. Whether you answer it wrong or right, that's a separate matter. Which also means that speed is the most important thing to crack NMAT. Only when you are fast, you'll be able to go through the entire paper and answer more questions correctly. Also, you cannot completely ignore one topic, one area, or one section, because that is going to affect your chance of getting into NMIMS. So NMIMS has sectional cutoffs. So there are a lot of institutes who accept NMAT score, and NMIMS is one of the institutes. But NMIMS looks at the sectional cutoff. So you have to ensure that you're performing well on all the sections if you want to get shortlisted at NMIMS and even have a shot at converting the final call. So now let's also understand if there are any changes in the delivery. So there are no major changes on the test delivery front. The test taken can be taken at a test center, or you can take it online from home the way it was last year. Now you can take the NMAT a maximum of 3 times. We have seen a lot of students taking 2 attempts. Some of them have taken 3 attempts also. Some are even satisfied with their score in the first attempt. So it is completely up to you. If you want to improve your score, you can always take another attempt at NMAT, but a maximum of 3 attempts. The one brilliant thing about NMAT is that it gives you an option to select the order or sequence of the sections in which you want to attempt the paper. So when you begin the test, it shows you an option wherein you can select that, okay, I'm going to do quant first, then logic, and then I'm going to do verbal, which means that you can play according to your strength. So once you finalize this option, you will not be able to change it. But this happens possibly about 5 minutes before you start your paper, and that is when you have to decide which order you want to go with. And lastly, one very interesting thing is that the unofficial scorecard is displayed immediately after the test. In pretty much every test that you will take, you'll have to wait for at least 2-3 weeks or a month to see your result. But that doesn't happen in NMAT. You get your score immediately on screen the moment you submit the paper. Moving forward to a major change that has happened this time, which is with NMIMS. So NMIMS has started its own application. So see, NMAT and NMIMS are 2 separate things. A lot of students misunderstand this and they don't end up applying to NMIMS. NMAT is a test, and that test score is accepted by a lot of institutes, NMIMS being one of them. So when you apply to NMAT, it doesn't mean that you are sending your application to NMIMS for the MBA program. So what you need to do is apply to NMIMS separately. Now NMIMS has also started its own applications for 22 cycle. So if you are applying for NMIMS, of course NMAT is the score that they will be accepting. But earlier, they used to accept the best of the 3 scores that you submit or 2 scores that you submit. A lot of students would take 2 attempts or 3 attempts and they would submit all those scores. And NMIMS used to take the best of those scores. But what they have done this year, and that's the only and the major change that is there, which is that NMIMS has written that they will accept candidates from the main examination only and retakes will not be considered. So what you're seeing on screen right now is the snapshot of the actual notification which you can find in the NMIMS information brochure. So there are 2 important things. Number 1 is the first part, which is note that candidates are requested to register for NMIMS before NMAT by GMAC exam. For example, if NMAT is scheduled for 9th October, the candidate is required to register on or before 8th, which means you have to apply to NMIMS even before you have taken your NMAT. And the second thing is that NMIMS will accept candidates from the main exam only, and all the retakes and reapplications that you do will not be considered. So that's a very important thing. It's a major change that has happened. Not very sure why they have done it. Personally, if you ask me, the last year process which was followed was the best one because you had 3 attempts at NMAT. So you could submit those scores and they were taking the best of that. So there is definitely some implication on the entire test population who is applying to NMIMS this year, that they'll have to think about when exactly they want to take NMAT and apply to NMIMS. So let's also understand the important dates now. So the scheduling has already started. It started on the 3rd August. It will continue to happen till 17th November. The exam delivery is going to be from 14th October to 27th December, which means you can take the test anytime between 14th to 27th. However, you will have to plan for your attempts very well, because the NMIMS application being the most important thing, that only the first attempt is going to be considered. So you have to be adequately prepared to take your NMAT. So when should you schedule your first attempt? See, now the change that has happened is only for NMIMS and not for other colleges which are accepting NMAT. So for these colleges, they will continue to accept the best of the scores that you submit, which means you might end up taking 2 attempts or 3 attempts. So when should you take your first attempt? And this is something that NMAT only has suggested, which that if you want to take a total of 3 attempts, your first attempt should happen prior to 24th November. If you are aiming for 2 attempts, your first attempt should happen between 25th November to 10th December. And if you're somebody who is planning for only 1 attempt, then you should definitely take it prior to 11th December. So I'll have to think what exactly I'm planning to do. I'm planning to take 1 attempt, 2 attempts, or 3 attempts. So give it a thought, and then only you can start your application and select the first attempt date. Let's also quickly look at the NMIMS cutoff now. So this is the cutoff for last year admission cycle, which is 21-23 batch. And it was again surprising to see that the cutoffs were same in each of the sections. So this is very unlikely. We had never seen this kind of a thing prior to this. And the MBA overall cutoff for NMIMS Mumbai campus was 235 out of the 360, which is the highest score in NMAT that one can get. As you look at the other colleges, such as the MBA at NMIMS Indore or NMIMS Navi Mumbai, you would see that the cutoffs are slightly different compared to the main campus. So these were officially declared by NMIMS when they gave out the calls for the 21-23 batch. So when the final scorecard was released, this was shared with everybody. So these are official cutoffs. And if you had seen the cutoffs prior to this, so these were last year, but if you had seen 2020 cutoffs or 2019 cutoffs, even a score of 210 would have been sufficient. So you must be wondering what changed then. That time cutoff was 210, now it is 235. So what is happening? So there was some change in the entire scaling and scoring mechanism last year. And that is why everybody's score sort of improved. So people who were scoring in say 210 range in 2019 or 2020, when they took NMAT, as in last year NMAT, they saw an increase in their score. So because everybody's score had improved, the cutoff also went up, which wasn't a big surprise. So we're hoping for the cutoff to be in the range of 230 to 40, and ultimately the cutoff was was exactly 235. So this is where, as an aspirant, you have to understand that I have to perform well in each of the sections. We saw quite a few students last year as well who did exceptionally well in one section, but missed out on by maybe 1 mark or 2 mark in some or the other section. So to ensure that you don't miss out on a call from NMIMS, which is what I think everybody who is taking NMAT is aiming for, you have to ensure that you do well in all the sections that are there on the test. So how can IMS help you? So first of all the CAT programs that we have include specific workshops for NMAT and the complete NMAT test series. We also offer NMAT, SNAP, CET, CMAT specific batches and self-learning programs. So you can see some details on the screen. And if you want to know more, you can definitely get in touch with the nearest IMS center or visit the IMS India website to know more about it. So I hope this video has helped. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section. I hope I've answered most of the questions, but if you would like to ask something, please feel free to drop a comment, and we'll be happy to answer at the earliest. I hope this video has helped. So the only thing that remains now is to start preparing for NMAT. The notification is out, the registration has started. So plan for your NMAT, start preparing, and happy to help. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.